Chris, obviously there's going to be a lot of questions about the offseason. Guys like Julius, Nas, Nikhil all have contract situations that are up in the air.
Yeah.
Kind of as you make plans for the offseason, does that affect how you attack this, or are you just kind of getting away for a while and then letting the chips fall where they may?
Yeah, I just I'm sure the front office will, be in contact with everybody and myself included about their strategy, what they intend to do, and I mean it's our intention to keep everybody here, and they always do a great job of communicating that, and but we've also made a trade on the eve of training camp, so going away and doing a lot of planning, it doesn't feel like it's necessarily, yeah.
We just talked to Nas, and we were talking about his situation. He views himself as a starter in the league.
Yeah.
And, if assuming Rudy, Julius are back, probably 6-man again. Do you, in your conversation with him over the years, is that a large enough role? Do you think for him, and just how he has dealt with that, despite maybe being a starter level player in this?
I mean, he's dealt with it very well. And he's grown his role every season, as we've talked about. As we've talked about and acknowledged, we have 8 starter quality players. We just do. And, but again, we don't know what the roster will look like. So, I'm not really going to get into like forecasting what our starting lineup is going to look like in October right now. So we'll just have to see. And first thing is obviously get those guys happy and re-sign.
Where do you think Ant is in his developmental arc, and what more do you want to see from him next year?
And I think he's in a really good place in his developmental arc. I think 23 years old. He's got 2 Western Conference Finals under his belt. He's been able to navigate a lot of different looks and defenses. He's got a pretty good amount of winning, a lot of winning actually underneath his belt too. This was a big year for him, and it was kind of his team, quote unquote. I thought he did a good job with his leadership. I thought he did he's a pretty much show up and play every night guy. He's about the right things there. His habits supporting his game keep getting better and better with his work, his preparation, his diet, all that stuff is just getting better. So a lot to be encouraged there. I think for areas of improvement for him is just going to be along the think the game route, really. I think he's got to also kind of figure out a bit of a closing package, and we have to help him there. What shots and places on the floor can he repeatedly get to? Foul drawing. I think you see right now in the league, you see what gets rewarded, and you need to kind of lean into that a little bit, even though it's not necessarily how he likes to play, but it seems to be effective. So I think it's a little bit more about kind of the gray matter than it is any kind of, of course, adding some skill is always important, but yeah.
Chris, Ant last night talked about OKC looking like 15 puppets on a string defensively, and Rudy credited them and their discipline.
Yeah.
Assuming that that's kind of the standard now, how can this group get to that point in terms of consistent game plan execution where they are carrying out and making very few mistakes in those areas that seems to be kind of required to reach that next level?
Yeah, I think we had a little bit of regression defensively this year. I think some individuals didn't have the year that they had a year ago. I think it starts there. We got to get our individual defense, particularly our on-ball containment, was inconsistent all year. That's got to be better. I think defensively we have to begin to morph a little bit around Rudy. We've got to do different things. He's got to be open and and available to allowing us to do those things, which help protect him too. So yeah, I think and just at this level, where we've been the last couple of years, it's really about the small points that let you down more than anything else. A lot of that is game plan execution and consistency of that. So
we've seen in the past
the
changing of coverages and whatnot during seasons, during games. Those haven't always been executed the best by guys. So is that just going to take personal growth from players to be able to lock in on things and be able to maybe have multiple things in their minds and carry them all out?
Yeah, we've prided ourselves on being able to do multiple things, but I think there's maybe it might be less about just like changing your coverages or your strategies and more about looking at your philosophy in general. I think that's something that we have to look at. Listen, we're still very, very good defense, but we do have limitations that we probably shouldn't have. I think we can go to another level. So that we got to be open-minded about that. That starts with us as a coaching staff. I think we can get better with habits, and that's on me. That's my job. I'm the gatekeeper of that. So.
Chris, I think last night you mentioned your young guys itching to play.
Yeah.
Specifically with Rob, what do you want to see from him kind of this offseason to see him make that strides? And with where Mike is in his career, do you see that point guard situation changing fundamentally next year?
Well, I think first thing Rob has to realize is that there's great opportunity in front of him. With Mike and his career, I think Mike can still really be a super high-level contributor for us, but we're gonna have to continue to manage his minutes and his workload overall. That creates a great opportunity for Rob or somebody to step in there, and that should be an incredible motivating factor. I think Rob has a good feel now for what the NBA is like, what we need him to do. I loved his defensive growth this year more than anything. I think offensively he's got to figure out how to simplify his game, and he's got the ability to get to the heart of the defense and create pace and make plays from those spots on the floor that we desperately need that. I do think at times like he needs to just go somewhere rather than try to overcomplicate it with a lot of dribbling. Just put your head down and go, use your speed, and then I think he's got to kind of round out his shot. He's got some inconsistencies right now. Playing next to Anthony is going to lead to a lot of catch and shoot opportunities. He's got to be ready for those. He's got to be able to knock those down at a pretty high clip. I think once he gains some physical strength and develops some consistency, kind of every shot is a little different. A lot of twists and turns and doesn't always come up and down in the same spot. So those are things you can definitely work on and get better at, and I think he'll see growth there pretty easily.
Chris, when it comes to like the focus and consistency needed for game plan execution, how much of that can you improve the way you would improve a basketball skill like shooting? Like, how much room is there, you think, for guys to?
Yeah, I think it's concentration is an acquired skill like anything else. The more you do it, the better you get at it. The more you prioritize it, the better you get at it. And we've shown the ability to do it. We just got to be able to do it, at the highest level when it matters most. And I think, for our team, they now have been in the league long enough. A lot of these concepts aren't foreign to them. There is a notion that says like, hey, what you can actually do and have confidence in being able to execute like is different than what you might think works. Coaching staff, we battle that with all the time. Like, hey, this is what we should do. Like, yeah, well, is your team capable of doing that even if you are completely locked in? So those narratives don't always line up. But yeah, we got to figure out, like, people who can't do that, then, they're not going to be able to help us at this point in time. So.
When thinking about the success you guys did have this season, as well as the possible frustrations from this last series, is there a feeling about the season as a whole that wins out for you?
Yeah, I think pretty rewarding. I think it is probably my encapsulation of the season, just because we went through a lot of trials and tribulations. I'm not going to lie, it wasn't an incredibly fun season for me at times, and I don't think it was for our guys. But we always found a way to kind of figure it out and get better, and and that was the rewarding part. The way that, listen, I mean, been in sports long enough. You guys follow sports. Like, this shit never ends well. It don't matter if you lose by 40 or you lose at the buzzer. There's only one way that it ends well. So to sit here and ruminate about how the season ends, or how much it hurts a fan base, or how much it hurts a player or whatever, or some long-suffering franchise, like, every city, every sports team goes through the same stuff, You should be an Eagles fan in the 80s. It wasn't fun. So, but, yeah, we're making up for it, right? So, I'm not saying they should. I'm just saying, like, it was a rough childhood. So yeah, I just think, like, consistency of approach and putting yourself in the place time and again to get enough chances to do it. I mean, how many times did Boston have to get there before that's what the league is about right now. We're about to have our 7th different champion in 7 seasons. Unprecedented. We thought that some of these teams are on the verge of a dynasty, and it didn't work out. And who knows? So, I like where we're placed, but we got to keep pushing. So,
Chris, one of the chronic issues of your tenure thus far has been turnovers, and that's obviously affects the defense to some extent. Also, on offense, getting out in transition when you make turnovers, both sides of the ball. How can you improve? On that aspect?
Yeah, that's a good one. That's that's on me. That's about execution offensively. I think we give a ton of freedom to our guys. I think sometimes we end up in less than ideal situations. We've been talking about rejigging our offense a little bit too going forward. But I think a lot of it is just most of our turnovers are kind of controllable. Just the head down, plow through a crowd, play's not there. I think we got to have more of a mentality to just kind of avoid those situations. And a lot of them, I think, are guys just trying to make something happen out of nothing, or guys get a little bit, they haven't touched the ball in a little bit, and they want to be aggressive for themselves. So, but we got to clean up our spacing. There's no doubt. Getting some more ball handlers on the floor will certainly help too. Passing, IQ, feel, all that stuff has to go up, whether it be through internal growth or roster acquisition.
Chris, kind of along those lines, I remember at exit interviews past couple seasons, you've talked about a need being adding a player who can break the paint. Obviously, you did add that in Julius. Does that still, though, feel like something you need to add to this group, whether it be internally, Jaden, other guys sort of developing further in that way, or externally bringing someone is just breaking the paint and having more guys who can punch gaps like that? Still a big need here. Yeah,
I think so. I think in the game today, with all the switching that you see, you need 2 things: you need passing and you need ball handling. That's what I think you need. I mean, everybody wants shooting, but I think it's the other things that unlock shooting that you might have. So, but there's other ways to break the paint. You can play off the catch quicker. Like, we're not the best at that. Like, I think we have a bit of a hold mentality sometimes. When we do break the paint, I think there are plays to be made for others. Whether it be lobs to Rudy, we missed a ton of those this season. We certainly got better with the kickouts, as our volume 3 would tell you. Our volume 3s would tell you. But yeah, I think Jaden's growth is one of the highlights of the season. He's a legitimate two-way player now, but what we need from him is some more playmaking when he gets in there. Now he's getting the touches. Now he's getting the shot attempts are up, and so now he's one of the guys who can find Rudy. He can find Ant, and so that's a dimension I think would really help us. So.
Chris, what do you think unlocked the growth for Jaden this year?
Honestly, it was a rash of injuries. It was opportunity, like most people. I mean, and again, that's on me, for not having been more purposeful around that earlier in the season. But I've talked about this before. We had a lot of other things we were just trying to sort out in the beginning of the season, and we came into the season with the priority of building off Jaden's playoffs last year. And unfortunately for him, just all the other things with Julius, Dante, and just trying to get everybody situated and figured out, it kind of took a back seat, which was unfortunate for him. But when we had the injuries and he had to step forward, I think it was great for him. It was on-the-job training, and everybody could see it. So they leaned into it and they fed it a bit more.
Seen the Thunder and the Pacers obviously are in a good spot too, and those are two teams that just capitalize and transition pretty relentlessly. With you guys, it would seem like Ant would be the one to set the tone there. How do you put some TJ mindset into Ant sometimes when he gets out in the open floor?
Yeah, I think that's one. He's got to take advantage. He's got to get back to some of a younger version of himself, if you will, when he was more potent in the open floor. You see it now in the playoffs when teams are super committed to not letting him get to where he wants to go. He's got to find these other opportunities to get easy baskets. But those are habits. You can't just decide, I'm going to run, in game 82. So I think he's got to do more of it. It also flows naturally into his off-ball game, which I thought really took a step forward this year. And then, more guys that run in general, like TJ, they kind of stick out for us right now. We don't play the fastest. And even as much we try to, physically we don't, or the guys that are fast are a little reluctant to do so.
Chris, we see the energy that Shannon brings, in the playoffs, et cetera, too. Is he the kind of guy that could be a lockdown defender, too? We're just trying to kind of figure him out, but does he have that kind of athleticism that we saw a little bit with Oklahoma City? Yeah,
he has all the raw tools to be a great defender, no doubt about it. I think it's for him, his biggest area of growth this offseason and in the next season is really shoring up his defense. He should be destructive, be able to blow up a lot of stuff, has a body to contain. Like most young players, what trips him up a little bit at the moment is just the awareness that things are happening so fast and just getting a feel for that. And that's just repetition. So,
with just to put a bow on the defense thing, not just stick a random number on it, but does it feel like with this current roster, if it's pretty similar moving forward, the best version of it probably has to be maybe a top 3 defense in the league? I think this roster, the best version of it, has to be maybe a top 3,
as opposed to
6 or whatever it was this year.
Okay.
It seems like a distinct difference.
So you're saying we didn't? You feel like we fell short of our potential defensively?
Sure.
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, I think, I think we're definitely we should be a top 5 defense, and I think the things that let us down, as I talked about, were rebounding. Our first shot defense was very, very good, but unfortunately, it matters when they score on you. So our rebounding has to be better. I mean, Julius had a subpar rebounding year. Rudy had a subpar rebounding playoffs. Our smalls rebounded better as the season went on, which we knew we needed from Ant rebounded the ball really well. We talked about our on-ball contain was not what it was last year. fouling was up. And so, yeah, I think there's opportunity for growth there. Just if we shore up those things, that probably puts us in the top 3.
But just looking at numbers this morning, since January 1st, from the end of the year, net rating, it was Rudy and Mike.
Yeah.
In the playoffs, it was Jaden, and then it was Rudy and Mike. In the West Finals, it was Rudy and Mike.
Yeah.
Why do you think those two guys, even at, sometimes like matchup-wise, it doesn't always work out for them and whatnot, but why do you think they're consistently the guys who, I guess, the team plays the best when they're on the court?
Yeah, I think some of it is game plan execution. Some of it is they play the first 6 minutes of every game, and you're not usually down 20-2 in the first 6 minutes. So, you're kind of trading baskets out there. And that's who they are. They're super consistent players. And they're usually on the floor together, or we try to put them on the floor as much as possible together. So,
Chris, I still can't figure out what the big man's role is in the NBA. Sometimes, like Rudy was great against LA, and I know it fluctuates, but some teams are so positionless now. Mm-hmm. What does that bode in the future as you build the team and you're trying to figure out how many minutes to give him versus this idea that you can go with 5, 6, 8 guys?
Well, we've leaned into being a bigger team over the last few years, and it's worked out for us, part of our identity. I think this year more than ever, we probably mixed up our lineups, particularly in the playoffs, and, didn't play Rudy at times. But, to answer your question about the role of the big man in the NBA, I mean, there's, posting up a big guy, those days are long gone. I mean, even when you have a guy who's really good in the post, like Julius we had a hard time getting to that just because the way they allow smaller players to guard bigger players. They just kind of mitigate their advantage. I mean, Julius' advantage is power, and, they were just, being more powerful back, and he wasn't allowed to do or get position, even if he was being dislodged from his spot. So it's hard. You need big guys right now in the league. I think the league is trending back to size, not away from it, but it is trending back to skilled size. You see a guy like Chet, who 7 foot running around. He's really good at the rim, and he's also can stretch the floor. So I think you need size, and I work for Kevin McHale. He always said, "Good big beats good small any day." So, and I think that's still hold true.
And Chet had an advantage, maybe the other big guys do too, that he was kind of raised to learn that he had to shoot it, right? I mean, you're seeing that group in his age group now that understand it's not enough. You're not going to be able to post, so you do a whole bunch more things, that whole generation.
Yeah, absolutely. The player development of our skilled big guys is at all-time high. And, but that's not discounting what Rudy does for us. The switching, and the holding and the mitigates a lot of his gravity as a roller, that's something that we haven't been able to consistently unlock or take advantage of this year. It's just something we have to get better at. So, all right, thank you guys.
Take care.